Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my second Valorant roster rebuild. This time I'm doing my Americas team, which is Loud, as voted for on Twitter. Um, I was kind of hoping for either Furia or MIBR because I'm actually really excited for what those rosters are going to be. Um, but honestly, thinking about it more, this Loud roster kind of sets the groundwork for what the other two teams are going to look like. So I do think that is probably the best place to start for this series, at least in Americas. If you're interested in other rebuilds like the Furia and MIBR ones, those will be coming later after Champs, after Ascension. Um, I also just posted my Koi one a few days ago, which is the one that you guys voted for on EMEA, and then Bleed will be coming later for Pacific. So if you're interested in any of those, stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe, everything like that really helps me out and kind of grow the series. Lets it like pushes it out to other people that are interested in this kind of stuff. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. So before we get into this, I do want to kind of explain the premise of the series, where this is what I would do, not what I predict or what I think will happen or anything like that. I feel like kind of predicting that stuff is more for like the reporters and people who like actually have inside information on Loud. Uh, so yeah, I just want to explain that so you're not like, oh, they would never actually do this. I don't care if they would actually do it. This is what I would do. Um, yeah. Before we get into everything though, in terms of the roster changes and everything like that, we need to recap this team and go through the goals of what I want to do next year with this roster. So for 2024, they lost Ospas and replaced him with QCK to begin the year. Not the greatest of moves. I think I had him as my number one duelist coming into the year, or no, number two behind Demon One. And then QCK was my number 11 just because I had no idea what to expect with him. And I don't think QCK started off that bad. Second in America's kickoff with this team, fourth at Masters Madrid. Not bad results from this team. Kind of expecting more coming into the next split, especially with that Phoenix comp kind of running out of legs or whatever you want to call it. Um, Stuff like that. When you expect them to transition to more normal comps on more maps, they just didn't have time to do that before stage one. And they went 2-3, barely snuck into playoffs, and then they went out in one game and lost 100 Thieves. Then they replaced QCK with Pancada, moved Saadhak over to the duelist, Tuyes over to the flex. Not the best roles. Like, if it was Tuyes playing the duelist and Saadhak on the flex, which I think is when they look their best this season, then yeah, I can get behind it. Like, I don't think Tui's Jet was that bad when he played it, but it wasn't like great or anything, obviously. So that is like a big area where we need to improve on this roster. That duelist slot, you just need that big level of firepower. I don't know how to exactly describe it, but I think everybody understands what I mean. When this team needs a duelist player that will play duelist for this team and nothing else. I mean, obviously you want them to play more than just duelist, but that's what they're going to play. In stage two, they missed playoffs, 2-3 again. Just looking bad, honestly. Just straight up. Towards the end of the season, they started to look better again, just like they did in stage one, but it still wasn't good enough for this team. So now to go through the goal for this roster, because I think this is the biggest, I don't know, point to why I'm making these moves. Because some of these are gonna be interesting. And I'm gonna make every player available to other teams. If a team wants to come get one of the players, they will get that player, pretty much. I mean, there's quite a few players with expiring contracts, so that's how it would work in real life anyway. But I'm just going to assume any player that is on the team currently would have to drop a player to give him to another team, because I don't know the players' motivations, where they want to go, whether they want to stay with the org and the team, or whether they want to move somewhere else. So I'm just gonna assume all the players are for this team, but if I'm MIBR or Furia, I can come poach one of these players, or maybe even a different org. Um, so yeah, I think that'll kind of explain why I'm removing some of these players. So now onto the three players that we will be removing, And I think it is a little bit disingenuous to say that we're removing the second two. But Pancada is at least my own decision in terms of if I'm loud, I'm gonna remove him. Just because mainly I want to move two years back to the smokes role where he's at his best. I don't think he was bad on flex at all. I just want to see him back on smokes where I think his level of aggression and kind of read on the game is at its best. But that means it'll come at the expense of a world champion in Pancada, who, I mean, we'll get into it a little bit, but just hasn't been the same since joining Sentinels. Then we will be losing Saadhak and Less to a different team that I'm not going to reveal yet. They will get poached. To They are both going to the same team. I'll tell you that. Um, that's it. That's all the spoilers you'll get. But we'll dig into why maybe they're going to a different team in a little bit. But yeah, we'll start digging into Pancada a little bit more. Where again, he just hasn't been the same since joining Sentinels in 2023. I do think it's less of his fault as maybe it would seem like or as it would be like other players that maybe fell off since then. Like, he's been put on different roles. He's been speaking a different language, just has his confidence ruined. Didn't play for, he got benched on Sentinels. He didn't play for like half the year. So, just not an ideal scenario if you're Pancada. And again, I want Tui's to go back to smokes, which is kind of a big reason why Pancada will be leaving. Um, I still think he can be a really good player, but I want him to prove it somewhere else so we can let Tui's, again, just play that flex role or not flex role, play that smokes role where he is at his best, because I think he is genuinely a world-class smokes player, and I think he should just stay on that role, not try anything else. Then we got to get into Less and Saadhak, where the reason I made these guys available is just because we need to make changes to this roster. And other teams are going to really want these guys. These are quite possibly the best Sentinel and the best IGL in the world, respectively. I don't think that's a hot take. Saadhak, as of recently, has been playing some weird comps, has not had the best read on the meta, but overall, he never really has, honestly, in my opinion. I think he's just been a very, very good like mid-round caller and just IGL, maybe not mid-round, just mid-round, but like game planner, everything like that. And I still think team will have enough firepower with Tui's, Cowanzine, and the guys we're bringing in to contend again, even without these guys. I think this team should be fine. Obviously, it does not feel good to lose Less and Saadhak, but I think you can kind of get some of what they were from other players and kind of reset the vibes of this team that just were really bad last year. All right. And now we need to go through what we need and some potential replacements for these players that we are getting rid of. We need a duelist player. I think that is my first priority. We need an IGL, either a sentinel or a flex player on that role, and then a player of the other kind. So like either a flex player IGL or sentinel player IGL, and if we get the sentinel, then we get a normal flex player, obviously. Like just fill in the gaps on this roster. We're keeping Kawan and Tui's on their main roles. Not going to change too much up with them, but the rest of the roster, we are going to need some options for replacements at least. So I wrote free agent here. I should have wrote available duelists and available sentinels and available flex players and available IGLs. But for Brazil, I do think there's quite a bit of duelist talent. You got Digizin, Sato, Zantaz, wait, Zenatsu, I think is how you pronounce that, and then Gobera. All very good players, I think. Some are a little bit more developed than others. I think some have a little bit more raw talent. Um, for Sentinels, you have Swagetsu, Besni, and Luxio, I believe is how you pronounce that. And then for flex players, you have Vinny, Brinks, pretty decent players. I think Vinny is actually very good. Brinks, I haven't watched a ton of this offseason, but I did like last offseason. And then for IGLs, you have Rafa, Besney, and Gaabxx. I think Besney could be an IGL or a normal player, uh, depending on what you want. So, in a kind of twist, since Artzin isn't technically available, um, he will be getting dropped in my MIBR rebuild and picked up here by Loud. I do think this is a big downgrade from Less. I'm gonna just say that straight up. I think you're probably going from the best Sentinel player to in Americas to about the seventh or eighth, maybe at best, at least for right now. But I do think he has grown a lot on the Sentinel role in the few games that he's played. Like from the end of the season to now, I think there's a big difference for Artzin, and if he can improve a lot in the offseason and throughout next season, I think you can get a very, very good Sentinel player that might fit better in a roster together with a bunch of young talent, young and up and coming talent. He could also play flex down the line or maybe some duelist if you need him to. I think the duelist would be like a secondary duelist kind of thing where like the duelist player we pick up here is playing Razor Jet and he's playing the other one and like a double duelist split comp or something like that. Um, that's really the only scenario where I would put him back onto the duelist role. But he has played it. It's good to have in the back pocket. And yeah, I just think he's very solid. And yeah, he just gets dropped from MIBR because of unfortunate circumstances for him. Then we have Gaabxx. I think is how you pronounce it. I think the X's are like SH sounds in Portuguese. Um, One thing that I found when like kind of researching his background, he was on that original Sharks team that made Masters Reykjavik, like the first one, which was kind of odd to me. But that shows he has some international experience. But this year was his first opportunity since then with Red Candids. Just very good fragging IGL. They can play many different agents under this role, whether it be like the Flash Initiators. I don't think he played a ton of like Viper stuff. Or no, he played some Sova. He's played some Viper in the past. He hasn't played the Viper recently though. So that is he's played some Fade. He's played some KO. You'd like to see the KO at least be played more or the Viper be played more or something like that. That being said, Cowan has played quite a bit of KO, so you could fill in the gaps with that. Um, and I think the main reason I picked him up, which shouldn't really be the thing for IGLs, but I think more recently has been a thing. He's just a really good fragger on the IGL role. He's played Jet in the past. Like he has 131 maps of Jet and 43 of Sova, which is his next most. Um, so I'd like to see him continue to be like built up in this IGL role. You got a good coaching staff on Loud, I think at least. Maybe you get a new one, honestly, with everything changing with Saadhak going out. But I still think he's a good caller, despite the like fragging stuff. Like I think he's similar to Munchkin. I don't think he's as good of a fragger or as good of a caller. Yet he definitely hasn't proven it. But I want to mold him into something similar to Munchkin in terms of the one of the best players in the region. Maybe not the best caller in the world, but like still very, very good. And I think he can absolutely be that. He's just got to get more experience on this role. I doubt he's IGL'd on too many other teams, considering he's played 131 maps of Jet. So I think the more experience he gets, the better. And bringing him up to a tier 1 role like this, I think is very good for him. And last up here, we have Sado, who will be our duelist player. He's a young, up and coming duelist player for Galleries, I think is how you pronounce that. Galleries, yeah, is probably how it is. He can play all three of the main duelists: Jet, Raze, Neon. Big thing I look for in duelists that I'm adding to teams like this. Outside of maybe teams with a player like Asuna or something like that, where he can play the Raze and then that guy can go play some other role or something like that. Um, I think his Raze is one of the best I've seen from a tier 2 player, at least this year. Incredible at that, especially on Bind. That was like I watched one of his games on there. It was an absolute masterclass. And I think his jet is also very, very good. But I do think it could use maybe a little bit of work here and there. I think he goes maybe a little bit too fast. I think that's kind of the big thing with a lot of these great Raze players that aren't as good on jet is I think they take things maybe a little too fast. His jet is a little bit more of a slower agent. That's why players like Cryo are so good on it and stuff like that. So overall, like he does need some development. I think he's going to be very similar to somebody like Paula, who MIBR has picked up and brought in to play for them as their duelist for Split 2. I think he'll be pretty similar to that. He'll show some flashes early on, probably struggle a little bit, but I think eventually he'll hit his stride. And when he goes through like more development, I think he'll be one of the better duelists in Americas just because of the raw skill he has. So our final roster here, we have Sato on the duelist, Gaabxx as the flex slash IGL. We already talked about both of those players. Then we have Cowanzine on the initiator. I think he's a top 5 initiator in Americas. That role is very much stacked right now with EU, Trent, Saucy, Crashies. You got Derek in there. You got Com in there as well. I think all extremely good players that are kind of contending for that like top 5-ish like tier. But I think he's up there. I think maybe having more success as a team, maybe making it deeper in these tournaments, kind of getting featured more, would kind of push him up that list a little bit more. Same deal with Tui's. I think he's probably around like top 5, top 6 smokes players in Americas. And again, same deal. Actually, I'd have him top 4. I'd have him 4th in that top tier. So I don't think he has maybe as much to prove as maybe Cowanzine like you'd think he would. But still, both of them extremely good players that were found when Saadhak was on this team, developed for multiple years now, and I think they're at a point where they should be 2 of the best players on this team and kind of be the experienced guys on the team to kind of build everybody else up. And then Artzin, who we also talked about on MIBR last year, very, very good Sentinel player and hopefully going to improve for this team in the future. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I'll be doing one more of these before Champs ends, so it'll probably be like in the break between like playoffs and or between groups and playoffs. I'll probably do like my playoff pick'ems video, and then I'll do this like the day or two before playoff starts. So stay tuned for that. It'll be bleed that time. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.